You know, some of the most beautiful songs ever written are kind of like Trojan horses. They get into your head with these gorgeous melodies, but once they're inside, they reveal a story that's often profound and sometimes deeply tragic. Today, we're going to unpack a true masterpiece that does exactly that. So just to give you an idea of how massive this song is, one writer, Dr. Cho, actually puts it right up there with Frank Sinatra's My Way. I mean, that's not just high praise, that is legendary territory. We are, of course, talking about The Boxer by the one and only Simon and Garfunkel.
And it is, without a doubt, a celebrated masterpiece. Before we dive into the tragic secret at its heart, let's just take a moment and appreciate what the world first fell in love with.
When this thing dropped in 1969, it wasn't just a hit song. It was a full-blown cultural event. It sold over 1 million copies, it cleaned up at the Grammys, and it pretty much instantly became one of the most iconic songs from that legendary duo. And even today, we all know it for that incredible harmony and that just beautiful flowing melody. A truly timeless piece of music.
But see, that's just the surface. The song structure is really unusual. It doesn't have a normal repeating chorus. Instead, what it does is tell a story that just keeps building, layer by layer, kind of like a life that you can't rewind. And that story, it's absolutely heartbreaking. So what is it? Well, this brings us to the real subject of the song. And it's not just some fictional character. It's a reflection of a really brutal reality. The central figure, the boxer, was actually inspired by a real person, a Cuban welterweight named Benny Kid Paret. In 1962, in a match that was broadcast on national TV, Paret took way too many punches. He collapsed into a coma and died 10 days later. Paul Simon took that awful event and used it to shine a light on the dangers of boxing and the sheer desperation of the guys who saw it as their only way out.
And this story of a hungry boxer, well, it isn't just something from a bygone era. It has tragically echoed all around the world and maybe most famously in the life of South Korean boxer Kim Duk-koo. His story is a devastating, real-world parallel to the song's lyrics.
Just look at this timeline from his final fight in 1982. For 13 rounds against the champion Ray Mancini, he was heroic. But in the 14th round, he was knocked down. He tried so hard to get up, desperately grabbing for the ropes, just refusing to stay down. But after the ref stopped the fight, he collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital for emergency brain surgery, but he never regained consciousness. 5 days later, at just 26 years old, he was gone.
And this takes us to what might be the most heartbreaking line in the entire song. I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. This is the boxer's trap. He's ashamed, he's hurt, he desperately wants to go home, but he can't. He has to stay in that ring to make a living. A horrible reality that sealed the fate of both Benny Paret and Kim Duk-koo.
But this trap, it's not just about poverty or desperation. It's actually built on something way more sinister, a foundation of lies.
This is where the song gets so much deeper. It becomes this powerful cry against falsehood. In fact, it's been compared to a famous Korean rock anthem where the title just means, it's a lie. And once you make that connection, you can never unhear it. Think about that famous lie, lie, lie chorus. With that percussive, punching sound, it suddenly stops sounding like just a melody and starts sounding like a desperate chant. Lie, lie, lie. And these lies, they're layered. It all starts with the promoter's mumbles about an easy payday. Then comes the self-deception that the fighter has to tell himself to even survive, I could win this. But the biggest lie of all, it's that false hope that he can just walk away from this dangerous life whenever he wants. It's a pattern of deception that, honestly, feels way too familiar, echoing all the false promises and scams we still see today.
And these lies have absolutely devastating real-world consequences. The tragedy of Kim Duk-koo didn't end when he died. Consumed by grief and guilt, his own mother took her life a few months later. And then, so did the referee of that very match. The lie of a glorious fight ended up destroying 3 lives.
So, where does all this tragedy and deception lead? Well, it all builds to the song's most famous, most philosophical observation, one that isn't just about a boxer, but about every single one of us.
This is probably the most quoted line from the song, and for a really good reason. It perfectly nails our human tendency for Willful ignorance. We filter out the hard truths and we cling to the comfortable lies. The boxer hears the promise of glory and just disregards the warnings of danger.
This line points to a super important difference between hearing and listening. See, hearing is passive. It's just sound waves hitting your ears. But listening is an active, conscious effort to understand. Paul Simon actually wrote about this before in The Sound of Silence, People hearing without listening. It's this powerful critique of how we tend to let hard truths just wash right over us without ever really letting them sink in.
And that's what brings the song's message right back to you and me. The boxer isn't just some character in a song. He's a mirror. How often do we do this in our own lives? Hear only the praise and just ignore the criticism. Hear only what confirms what we already believe and just tune out everything else.
Ultimately, the song and the tragic stories behind it, they leave us with this one powerful, really caring piece of advice. The world is full of lies. Big ones, small ones told by others, and the ones we tell ourselves. The most important fight any of us have is to see them for what they really are. So please take good care.